welcome to today's webcast, Harnessing and Leveraging Your E-Commerce Data. My name is Amanda Teschko. I'm a Business Intelligence and Analytics Consultant with Thorogood, and I'll be joined today by my colleague, Matt Harrison. Matt and I have been working with Thorogood for a number of years, helping customers implement enterprise business intelligence and analytics solutions, and we're joining today's webcast from our Philadelphia office. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with us via our contact details on the screen if you wish to have any further discussions on the topic. So our agenda for today will start with a bit of an introduction to Thorogood. We'll then cover some points on why we're talking about e-commerce today, so what's happening in the space and how might that affect your business intelligence and analytics solutions. And we'll wrap up by sharing some stories from our customers that we think will be of interest to you. So to get started, for those of you who don't know Thorogood, we are an independent global professional services firm specializing in business intelligence and analytics strategies, solutions, and services with a keen focus on our customers. We've just celebrated our 30th anniversary. And we are a global company. We have offices in London, New York, Philadelphia, Singapore, Sao Paulo, and Bangalore. And all of our consultants are recruited and trained in the same way to develop a unique mix of skills, blending business understanding in the form of industry and functional expertise with strong technical aptitude and a deep understanding of analytic tools and techniques. We offer a full range of BI and analytics services, including things like strategy and roadmaps, requirements, design, implementation, and training and support. Our clients typically span 4 data-rich verticals: consumer goods, pharmaceutical, banking, and insurance. And our clients are some of the leading organizations in these sectors. We take a lot of pride in the long-standing relationships we've fostered with some of the names that you see here. And because today's session will have a particular relevance to the consumer goods organizations as well as retailers, I thought I'd give just a bit about our experience working with a number of large players in that space. We do have experience across a range of departmental areas as demonstrated here, and our vast and varied experience helps us provide our consumer goods customers both breadth and depth in some of the key topic areas that are pertinent to the industry at any point in time. In terms of technologies that we work with, we are an independent consulting firm, which means we don't partner with just one specific technology. However, we do work and partner with a number of many key players across the market in order to really provide our clients with a solution that best suits their needs. And so now that we've shared a bit about Thorogood, let's take a look at why we're talking about e-commerce today. So it really won't be a surprise to anybody that the way we buy things today is changing. Previously, a consumer might enter a store, find a product they knew, or if they didn't know the product, they may read the packaging to get more information and make a decision about whether or not to buy it. We know that today that process is much more complex. So as consumers, we do things like read reviews online, or we may check out blog posts, engage in discussion about products on social media. And so an experience that was really once single channel, so a buyer walks into a store, we saw that start to evolve into a much more multi-channel experience. So maybe the buyer would buy it online or in a store or via the phone, but the experience were still very siloed. And now we're seeing a move to something that is much more omni-channel, which for the customer really means an experience that feels seamless across all of the different channels. And for retailers or manufacturers, what that means is an opportunity to really understand the customer and the path that the customer takes when making a purchase much more holistically. And so in many ways, e-commerce and digitalization has made much of this possible and has really started to necessitate that manufacturers and retailers adapt to this new climate. Another reason we're talking about e-commerce today is that while e-commerce may not be the largest proportion of some large packaged goods companies' business, we are continuing to see pretty rapid growth in that space. This report that you see here is from Nielsen, and it was from 2016, and it shows that e-commerce sales, and that's the darker blue portion of the bar chart there, is really what's driving the growth in a number of key consumer categories. The light blue on this chart shows your traditional brick-and-mortar growth, or for some categories, such as beauty, the decline there. And so you can really see the proportion of the growth that's being driven by some of these new means of purchasing goods. And Forrester is projecting that In 2017, we'll end the year with about 13% of U.S. retail sales being done online, and predicts that by 2020, almost 17% of those sales will be done online. So the rapid growth in this space is really causing many organizations to have a second look at their e-commerce strategies and really hone in on this area to consider how they can compete. And another reason is that for anybody who has been watching the news this year, we all know that the established leaders in this space are really being challenged. And those challenges have come in the way of activist investors pushing for greater profitability, predominantly through cost reduction. So you may be asking, how does e-commerce play into this? Well, if you think about the old brick-and-mortar world, there was always a limit on the number of competitors that a product could be up against. In that world, shelf space is a very tangible thing, so something that is finite and can be sold at a premium. And because of that, major changes across market share in any one particular category would typically happen over long periods of time and often require pretty deep advertising spend to be able to create or build brand loyalty. But in this new digital world, similar constraints really don't apply. When you think about the digital shelf, physical space is really no longer an object, and it's really allowing smaller brands to come into the market. A lot of those brands are seeing that they're not prohibited from competing by some of the traditional hurdles and barriers of getting into a physical retailer. If you think about a company like Dollar Shave Club, for example, which has now been acquired by Unilever, it's really a good example of a company who's thrived as a result of that low barrier to entry and more cost-effective ways of building a brand. So because building a brand has always been a very costly endeavor for many established leaders in this space, it's been an obvious place for companies to look when being pushed to achieve higher profitability through cost reduction. So we see a lot of organizations considering how can they cut back on some of that advertising spend. What we're seeing made possible by e-commerce, social media, and other digital avenues is really causing many companies to reconsider how they operate. And so in this type of climate, the answers to questions pertaining to e-commerce really become ever more valuable. When you start to ask yourself things like, how fast are sales growing through e-commerce channels? And what sort of impact do those sales have on my traditional brick-and-mortar sales? Some of these questions become very, very pertinent to understanding how organizations can play successfully within this space. However, getting the answers to some of these questions isn't always that simple, and there are really a number of reasons for that. In this type of environment, there's really a lot of variety in the types of data that organizations need to be able to analyze to be able to answer some of those questions. So that data can come from multiple retailers. It'll often exist in various different shapes. And because that data is often collected from third-party platforms, collecting it and aligning it, really not just with other e-commerce data, but with all of the channels for that joined-up view of the customer, can be something that's pretty challenging. We also find that it is often resulting in pretty large volumes of data. So if you think about all of the data that is generated as a consumer browses for a product online before choosing the right item and checking out, it's much different than just scanning a SKU at a register, which already generated a lot of data. We also see that because of some of those low barrier entries I talked about, there are a lot more brands out there now. So in a world where your competitors don't have some of those traditional barriers to entry, how do you stay alert to them? How do you be able to quickly recognize when a new brand is popping up? All of this really makes the need for cohesive data and analytics even greater. And it may even require predictive analytics in some scenarios to be able to handle those volumes. Organizations are really looking for a way to comprehend all of this information and to make sense of it so that they can turn it into tangible business decisions. And for many, this is where the opportunity and competitive advantage possibilities really reside. And so this will really lead us to our next section. And in this next section, Matt is going to talk to you a little bit more about e-commerce and what that might mean for the different types of data you collect and the type of analysis that you do with that data.
Great. Thanks, Amanda. So when we consider e-commerce in the BI market, it's important to recognize the various types of platforms at a company's disposal. Each of these types of platforms require consideration in the e-commerce strategy, and in terms of your BI strategy, each will present different opportunities to collect data and drive insights. For now, we're going to discuss the platform really synonymous with e-commerce, Amazon. So Amazon is the leading online retailer, and Fortune cites that Amazon could account for nearly half of all U.S. e-commerce sales by 2021. So mastering Amazon's market should be a key success criteria for any company committed to e-commerce. But Amazon is also one of many online retail platforms. Further, Amazon or any of these online places, there are a variety of considerations when managing the familiar marketing foundations of placement, price, and promotion. And it's importantly not one size fits all. Let's take placement, for example. In the e-commerce space, a product's placement is not only going to be its positioning on the retailer website, but also its relevance in key search terms or brand keywords. Various retailers, like Amazon, may provide different buyability scores based on various metrics. These scores will dictate how a product will appear to the consumer on the digital shelf. And companies like Clavis or Profitero offer platforms for managing content on an online retailer's website and metrics for analyzing these key considerations. And interestingly, Clavis and Profitero have both recently partnered with some of the leading point-of-sale data providers in IRI and Nielsen, respectively, which is really further solidifying their relevance in CPG as well as the digital commerce space. Next, if we consider price and promotion and platforms like PriceSpider or Bazaar Voice, we see a variety of platforms offering ways to monitor and enforce price guidelines across retailers and drive consumer reviews and ratings. In terms of price guidelines, it's important, given the variety of platforms, that the platforms from which you sell your goods don't undermine or cannibalize each other based on not adhering to the price guidelines that you've set. And in terms of consumer sentiment, given the variety of online retailers and the publicity of people's comments and sentiment towards your product, managing these drivers is ever more critical. In addition, platforms like Slice will allow you to assess your own sales trends as well as assess competitor trends similar to Nielsen panel data. Considering these platforms and metrics, we can begin to draw out some commonalities across these different offerings, which will help us shape the considerations when organizing ourselves around e-commerce. The first of these considerations I want to raise is the number of evolving and new metrics. So as we noted with the advent of e-commerce, we have a number of new factors to consider that will impact your sales and marketing. Metrics like consumer sentiment, conversion rates, cart abandonment rates, and retention rates all require new ways of thinking. Further, as technology advances, metrics will continue to evolve. So having a strategy that accounts for this change will ensure that you can adapt as new approaches become relevant. Next, we must consider the variety and volume of data. With the ability to track logins, profiles, user sessions, conversions, abandoned carts, there are really numerous ways in which a potential consumer can interact with your product and platform on the internet. The potential volume of data is massive, and of course the variety is also vast. So considering how structured data like sales and orders coexist with potentially unstructured data like customer service calls or customer service chats or product sentiment is a key consideration in this space. And lastly, we have software and data as a service. I mentioned a number of platforms that offer both data and analytics around e-commerce. And these typically cloud-based service providers are causing companies to consider, first and foremost, where they store their data. In addition to my previous point, we're dealing with potentially massive volumes of data. So there are a number of questions that might come up that make you want to consider how you might integrate cloud into your approach, such as, does it make sense to store this information at a lower cost in the cloud given the volume? Do I need to integrate this data with on-prem data sources, and how does that affect my strategy? How might I scale out my data storage as we introduce new data sources as the market continues to evolve? All of these are important questions warranting close consideration of what the cloud provides. So now we have a high-level view of e-commerce and the platforms and data available. Let's now jump into two specific e-commerce customer stories to draw out some of the commonalities across these specific initiatives. So the first customer story we're going to discuss is an initiative driven by a global consumer packaged goods company's market and consumer insights team. So prior to this initiative, the team was working solely with Nielsen's Nitro tool, providing insights only for brick-and-mortar stores. And in an attempt to increase the value of the insights that they were getting from Nielsen by expanding the reach and the data inputs, the team established a goal to increase speed to insights, replace the Nielsen Nitro platform, and integrate relevant e-commerce data sources. More specifically, they sought to answer the following questions. First, how are my sales channels growing, looking across brick and mortar and e-commerce? How does the e-commerce channel impact brick and mortar? So what's the interplay between both of those? And then ultimately, or in addition, how are the competition performing across those channels when considering panel information? As you can see, this company recognized that without considering e-commerce data, they were only getting part of the story. And so how did they achieve these goals? Well, in this case, they looked to leverage any available APIs as well as external data files to create a SQL database with a series of interactive Tableau dashboards. These reports served a much wider audience than the Nitro tool previously did and provided more actionable insights given the ability to integrate both brick and mortar and e-commerce data sets. Looking ahead, considering some next steps, the team is considering how they might move this platform to the cloud. Important here, both with the company's overall cloud strategy, but also considering the fact that this is all external data. And so there are quite a few synergies with storing this data on the cloud and ensuring that the team is able to rapidly get to insights with the tools they already have provided and considering how they might integrate new data sources. For our second story, we're going to review a team looking to bring together internal sales and product information with external e-commerce data. In this case, the customer is looking to create a full picture or 360-degree view of a reporting suite for the e-commerce sales and marketing teams. With a specific focus on e-commerce, they sought to answer the following questions. So what are the profile of the e-commerce purchasers? So who are their buyers? What's the average purchase quantity and frequency? And then really getting at whether or not they can influence purchase quantity and frequency by understanding some of the profile information around their e-commerce buyers. So for this initiative, the team looked to use ClickView to quickly and flexibly bring together and report on their internal and external data. In ClickView, they created a set of dashboards as well as ad hoc reports to allow for users to pick and choose from the metrics most relevant to them at a given time. And this was important given the rapid pace of growth in this space for this company. In fact, at the time of this initiative, sales through e-commerce channels were accounting for only about 4% of value, but they were growing at a pace of 50% per year. And looking ahead and understanding that pace of growth, it's no surprise that the key next steps here was working out how they can continue to integrate additional e-commerce data sources to enhance that 360-degree view. So this includes both internal and sometimes external data sources, forcing them to think about how they can continuously integrate new sources as new sources become relevant, but not slow down the already established and valuable insights. So now let's consider some of the key takeaways and commonalities from these stories. First, we have to consider the interplay between various data sources, whether it be external and internal, or in some cases just external data sources, like we saw in our first example. So analyzing the external or market data on its own, in a lot of cases, isn't going to be good enough. In our second example, the organization critically focused on how their external data could integrate with their internal data in this way to give themselves really a full 360-degree view of their product's performance in the e-commerce space. In the first example, we saw the need to bring together various external data sources to achieve a complete market view. Next, there is the idea of continuous change. And with both of our stories, those who shaped these initiatives understood that not only is e-commerce a growing industry, but also their company's analysis and approach to e-commerce is continuing to grow and evolve. This recognition of change and evolution of their company's approach to e-commerce ensured that these companies will continue to adapt as the market matures. looking ahead to cloud or integrating new data sources shows that for these teams, the job in this space is really just beginning. And lastly, we have flexible insights. And so building on the previous point of continuous change, this is not only true of the platforms available, but also true of the desired insights at a given time. In both of our discussed stories, the customers put specific focus on flexible reporting platforms like Tableau and Qlik, allowing for both high-level dashboards and more detailed analysis when required. Recognizing that an analyst's needs may change is just as critical as recognizing that the way we attract consumers is evolving from brick and mortar to e-commerce to the omni-channel. Said simply, the world of static reports and static insights is far behind us. And so now that we've explored both e-commerce platforms in general as well as some specific e-commerce stories, let's see if we can wrap up by establishing some concluding considerations when planning your e-commerce strategy. So first, across both the market and some of the stories that we shared, we see an importance of adaptability. So we've discussed the variety of ways in which customers will, as well as the e-commerce market, has adapted to change, whether it be new data providers, new e-commerce providers, reacting to activist investors, market trends, or competition. Taking a flexible approach to your e-commerce strategy and your BI development within that strategy will ensure that you can quickly attack new areas of opportunity and always get the most from your data. Next, we have data integration. Given the variety of e-commerce platforms as well as the types of data, being able to effectively integrate a variety of sources will ensure that you're creating complete views of your products and consumers. Combining individual data sets will mutually enhance your overall view and create very rich combined data sources. Working with partners like Thorogood to integrate various data sets will ensure that you can combine data accurately and efficiently and always designed for reporting and insights. Third, we have cloud. When we considered the variety of data sources and platforms available in the e-commerce space, we saw several examples of software and data as a service. In addition, the next steps in our first customer story recognize the synergy of a cloud-based platform leveraging external data. Evaluating how your cloud strategy enables you to make the most of your e-commerce data will ensure that you aren't leaving anything on the table. In addition, cloud solutions can provide low-cost approaches to storing the inevitably large sets of data that come with e-commerce. And finally, we have efficiency. So while we've established the importance of adaptability, we also can't forego the importance of efficiency. Specifically, creating high-performance systems through efficient processes will ensure that the mass volumes of data you are rapidly receiving from your internal and external data sources can be quickly actioned upon by your business users. In other words, once you've worked out the metrics, data, and questions you are looking to explore at a given time, being able to get to those answers rapidly is key. And so that concludes kind of the key considerations and most of our content for the day. Hopefully you've found this webcast today to be helpful in both in providing a perspective on e-commerce as well as a perspective on business intelligence within the e-commerce space. We're just at close for today, so if you do have any questions, please do send them through and we can pick up with you following the webcast today. And so I just want to say thank you for everyone who's attended. We hope you found it valuable, and have a great day.